What you want to do is save hundreds with
Okay. You've been trained well, so let's categorize that. Is that a first, second, third, fourth quad in Dr. Hodges' assessment? Let's see. Content, excellent, right? Work and work. Composition, oh, it had soul. And performance, it checks all the boxes. Now the awkward transition. Did it again. Sorry, I should have done this before. It does have some application to our topic. Session 4, the thorns and thistles of work. And I need to change mics too. Maybe we can add that one to the folk dance tonight. All right, speaking of AI, how do you think I generated this image? AI, yeah. I did a few. Boo. I thought it was pretty good. 2 questions, and I got this. It didn't take long. It's amazing. But then after a few of these tries, it said something like, sorry, that's all the images you can do, but if you click on this, you can pay for more. Something to that effect. Thorns and thistles, what does this refer to? The fall, of course. We've already talked about the fall and its effects to a certain extent, but turn the clicker on. We're going to go deeper into this. This is the effect of sin on our spiritual condition. The fall affects us, and this affects so much about our work. Idolatry and work, selfishness, pride, self-seeking, covetousness. You know, all the things we talked about in the 10 Commandments that we fail in, those are all results of the fall. Of course, God is sanctifying us to become more and more holy, thankfully. So there's a reversal going on, hopefully in your heart as well. And then there is the effect on creation outside of our own bodies, on our spiritual condition. Thorns and thistles speaks to that, but many other things the fall has affected in creation, our physical bodies, and just give me a few. What are things we realize today that we would not have without Adam's failure? You get old, you disease, you die. That's certainly true. But outside of our bodies, cats. Yeah, we learned last night that cats are a post-lapsarian creation. All right, so we talked about entropy maybe. Other things, the fall effects in creation, general disease. How about natural disasters? Yeah, and the death they cause. We could come up with a long list that affects also our work as well. But those are thinking about how it affects us personally and our spiritual condition, how it affects the creation in general. And these are what we have to struggle with in this life. And we have to struggle with it in the context of our vocation, our work, and work in all of our callings, not just vocational work. So I'm going to break this down. Oh, there's provocative statements, right? Don't want to forget that. Ready? Because of the fall, the cultural dominion mandate is no longer at play. All work is fruitless and futile. You just need to muddle through until the Lord returns. Boo hiss. I can only be satisfied with a job if I enjoy all my work all of the time. Yeah. If you clap for that one, you're in for a surprise. Got a problem with your coworker? Go tell your boss. Boo, boo. I must approach all DEI and ESG policies with a great deal of skepticism. We'll talk about that a little more. All right, our agenda, will we get through 8 items? Probably not, but hopefully they're in order of priority. We'll do the best we can. We finish up at 2 o'clock? Yeah, okay. So let's move. We've already talked about the curse, some of its effect. Let's move to fruitlessness at work. Now, this category, I don't mean that work is totally without fruit. We'll see that in a minute. But it's less fruitful than it could be. I'm borrowing a lot in this particular talk from Tim Keller in his Every Good Endeavor. It's one of the books I highlighted at the beginning of our talks. So fruitlessness in work. Let's take a quick look back at the beginning. Very good place to start. Notice that the curse affects 2 of our primary prelapsarian or creation mandates. Be fruitful and multiply. Well, the curse affects that. You'll surely multiply your pain in childbearing. It's not just the physical pain of delivery, I think. You can think of that in terms of the child mortality, mother mortality, all the pain associated with childbirth, and even child raising. There's a lot of pain and work involved there that would not be true without the fall. But notice, there is even hope in these verses of curse in childbearing. You still have the blessing of childbearing. The command to be fruitful and multiply is still in play because God blesses us with children. All right? And then to Adam, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of all the days of your life. So the ground's cursed. How many like to garden? Work in a garden? Yeah. I planted my garden just a few weeks ago. Everything came up nice and well. But I noticed something else going on at the same time. Thousands of weeds. Where all those seeds come from, I have no idea. But I'll be fighting weeds the rest. Just a reminder every year how the ground is cursed. Disease and other pests and so forth. But notice the hope. And of course, this affects one of the creation mandates. We're to take dominion. We're to bring order. We're to care for the garden. Boom, right away, cursed. But the promise, you shall eat of it all the days of your life. It's not fruitless, it's just less fruitful than it would have been. Thorns and thistles, we already touched on that for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field, the hope built into this, till you return to the ground. Oh, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Again, the curse and then the promise right there with it. You shall eat bread. We're not starving. We're not dying from exposure. God blesses us. He provides even common and special grace in His creation so that the curse does not destroy us all. But then there is death. Many theologians even see a promise in this, right? Do we want to continue in this life, in this creation, in a fallen state? No. It groans, and we should groan for the new state. And even our death is a promise that there's something new. There's something after that. So those are some of the aspects of the fruitlessness of work. I want to, before I move on, just hit a few other things. There's 2 ditches we can get in here. It speaks to one of my provocative statements. We can fall into the ditch of cynicism. Oh, there's nothing we can do. Everything's just going to fall apart. Everything's fruitless. Let's just muddle through. Okay? Hope for the Lord returns soon. I hope He does. But that shouldn't be your reason, right? I hope He does. Lord, come soon. And then there's the ditch of utopianism. that by the sweat of our brow and pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, we can make this world a utopia. It's been a continuing cycle of error in human history. Probably most recently and most starkly in the early 20th century, before what? World War I, World War II, all the death and despair in China, in Russia, and so forth. So stay out of those ditches, no matter what your eschatological views are. You don't want to be in either one of those ditches, okay? So be careful there when we think about fruitlessness. There is a hope to come, and we will talk more about that hope later. One last thing on the fruitlessness of work. You should not avoid risk in either your preparation for work or your work. Take risk. God's economy is such, especially in a fallen world, that we must take risk. And there will be some things that fail, some things that success. Cast your bread upon the waters, the preacher says in Ecclesiastes. Try many things. Some things will fail. Some things will succeed. God has promised it would. And if we avoid risk, we will avoid being obedient in many ways. And we will certainly not have blessing. Risk is inherent in God's creation and in fulfilling His cultural mandate. We cannot avoid it. We should not try to. Parable of the talents. What's the last servant do? He buried it. He didn't want to take any risk. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. Futility of work. Okay, so even if we're fruitful, God blesses and He brings some material blessings to us and we're doing well, there's still a futility. Let's go to Scripture, Ecclesiastes. The preacher says, I hated my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled, and used my wisdom under the sun. This all is also is vanity. So there was a lot of sense of futility in Ecclesiastes. In this particular case, with respect to work, what's the cause of that feeling of futility? What's the cause? What's he thinking about? The fall, yeah, but death. So he's doing all this work, gaining wealth, maybe doing well, but he sees death coming, and all of it's for nothing, at least under the sun, right? And he sees it going to other people that are going to misuse it, abuse it, destroy it. What's it worth, right? The futility of work. But the key word here is under the sun. I highlighted it. If we're working and not working before the face of God, as we talked about this morning, it will be futile. So he tried other things as well, by the way. So if you think work is futile, don't go off and say, well, ease and pleasure and entertainment is going to work. The preacher tried that too. Read Ecclesiastes. All of them empty. All of them fleeting. All of them vanity. So that's not going to work under the sun. What's above the sun? What's above creation? Sunday school answer, Jesus. No, the triune God. And we must have that perspective about our work and everything we do in this life. God will bless it. God gives us the ability to enjoy, to both produce, and the Proverbs tells us He gives us the ability to enjoy what we produce. If we leave out a God out of either one of those equations, we're going to have futility. So, before the face of God, not just under the sun. We read on in Ecclesiastes, and we see the text shift a little bit, and we see more references to God and the gifts of God. This is in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but read the whole book and see that shift toward, instead of under the sun, Carmen Deo, before the face of God. And then we can have hope. Then we can have satisfaction. All right, the drudgery of work. We can produce, be fruitful. God can bless. He can bless us to be able to enjoy the fruits of that work in this life, before the hope to come. But there's still going to be drudgery. Who's done some drudgery jobs? I want to hear the worst drudgery job out there. Who thinks they can win? Got one in the back?
I had to clean a bathroom where the septic tank overflowed.
That's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty drudgery. Can anybody beat cleaning up septic tank backflow? Right here in the back.
I cleaned the bottom of a fridge that had a rotting chicken in it.
Rotting chicken. Right here, you think you can beat them?
Very similar to him, I had to clean out a chicken coop that we inherited. Full of chicken.
Chickens are nasty things. You shouldn't eat eggs or eat meat, right? Yeah, go ahead. But there's puppies. Right here. Chicken poop, yeah, common theme. Chicken's bad. Yes, right here, the back.
It took 12 years of school.
One more, who can beat, right here, Abel.
I took 13 years of school.
Y'all are getting silly now. We'll cut it off there. Drudgery at work. So sometimes, I've got a mic. Sometimes, I've already said, even when we're fruitful, even when God blesses us, there's still drudgery in our work post-fall. Ecclesiastes 2:17, so I hated life because of the work that is done under the sun, which was grievous to me. It is all meaningless, a chasing after the wind. And certain parts of our job is that way, let's face it. Not all jobs and not all parts of jobs are satisfying. So let's give her a little perspective on this. You're young, inexperienced, of low value in the working world, right? You're going to have drudgery jobs. No way to avoid it, right? I had 6 years of drudgery jobs in the fields of South Carolina. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it. Teaches us a lot. We can learn a lot in drudgery jobs. We learn work ethic. We learn to work with others. We learn to work under supervision. We learn perseverance. Lots of learning there. So suck it up and go do it. It's going to be, it may very well, hopefully for you, you can say, this too will pass one day. But in the meantime, apply yourself well. Even after you do some of your training, get certifications, you're going to have some entry-level jobs. They're often a necessary step. They often are a higher percentage of drudgery jobs. This includes both accounting, finance, legal, banking, management, retail. All right, don't think these are going to be utopia. That's a part of life. And then it's going to be a part of all jobs. No matter how high you get, high value job you do in this economy, there's going to be a certain percentage of it that you just can't delegate, that you can't avoid. It's still quad one stuff. Remember our quads, Cubby's quads? Still quad one stuff, you got to do it, but it's just not fun, right? It's kind of drudgery. It's going to be there, so don't expect otherwise. If God blesses you with something better with that, praise the Lord, but it's not likely going to be true. How do you respond? I've already said some of this. Do good work no matter. Be content. Philippians 4:11. Be content in all things. And wait on the Lord in His providence for you. That doesn't mean you're stuck there. Waiting on the Lord doesn't mean doing nothing. I've already mentioned many times we should be striving, and let's talk about how you can be striving to do better and get out of the drudgery, at least part of the drudgery. Show initiative. In whatever job you're in, offer suggestions for improvement to the process flow, for waste reduction, quality improvement, safety, tools, automation, use of AI. Ooh, yes. All right. All these are things you can show initiative in, no matter where you are in the organization. All right. And don't be real pushy with your supervision. They see the big picture, right? The suits have the big picture. But still, look for opportunities for improvement. And then, to the degree you can do it and you have freedom to do it, make it happen. And then if you do find yourself, and then, of course, you're going to be improving yourself, so you make yourself more employable at higher level jobs, and that's going to reduce the drudgery of work as well. Get certifications, get training, on-the-job training, prove yourself, especially in your soft skills, ability to work with others, to take leadership, to take initiative, to solve problems, not to cause problems, not just highlighting problems, right? Worked with a lot of people. They're very good at highlighting problems. They're not so good at fixing them. Be a fixer. And you won't stay in these drudgery jobs very long. But what if you do find yourself in a dead-end job? I worked in an industry has, seemingly dead-end jobs, operator roles. You can go up a few steps, but operating a chemical process, you're doing the same thing day in and day out, week in and week out, year in and year out, most of the same thing. What if you find yourself in that? Well, you can change careers, learn something new. But there's even ways in those situations to improve yourself. More and more companies, I've already mentioned this, more and more companies are making what have been education track jobs available to people who've demonstrated ability, no matter what level they are in the organization. So you can move out of that job into higher roles. And I've seen a lot of them because of the shift schedule at Eastman. They have 10 days off every 4 weeks. They've taken those 10 days and done amazing things. They start their own businesses. They put in pools. They build houses. They pour concrete. They have a second career, which is very engaging, very satisfying to them. They like their day job because it provides good insurance and benefits, and that's fine. If you can live with that repetition and that, quote, drudgery, and you find another way to fulfill God's calling outside of work, fine. Some people do it that way, and that's not a bad option for you as we think about drudgery. But expect some of this, especially early, but don't get stuck there. You don't have to be, but be content in all things. Conflict at work. There's going to be a lot of it. Several categories of this. Conflict in business decisions. You disagree with where something's being done. Difference in opinion. That's one type of conflict. Personal conflicts, verbal offenses, harassment, persecution, selfishness, making itself appear in the workplace, self-promotion, people doing that kind of thing. And then there's conflicts of unlawful activities. And we kind of treat each of these a little differently. The first two are very similar, though. And I've already mentioned Matthew 18 a couple of times. It provides a pattern that we should follow in all conflict resolution. Right? First, go to the person that's offended, that you feel offended you, and then talk through it. Don't try to just let it go or cover it up. And this applies to you if you think you've offended someone else. Okay, so oftentimes you're in a workplace and you feel like you've done someone wrong. You're not sure how many people know about it, and you think, oh, I'll just let this go. It'll pass, right? Usually that's not true. It's building up, and you'll get a reputation pretty soon. How do you get out of that cycle? Go talk to the people. Pick up the phone. Get in their office and say, I think things aren't going well here. I feel some tension. Let's talk it through. And 9 times out of 10, that will solve a multitude of problems. Now, a lot of little of offenses, just like in the church, love should cover a multitude of sins. You don't need to address those necessarily unless they're very repetitive and start affecting your ability to work or someone else's ability to work. Go talk to the people. Don't talk to others. That festers. First of all, deal with it. Don't let it fester into a root of bitterness. Check your motivation, right? Are you doing this for the right reasons? Are you checking to see if you have a log in your own eye? Don't talk to others about it, gossip, backbiting, and revenge, unless those others are part of the solution. And then remain submissive and humble through the process. But then go talk to them. If you need to bring in someone else, if it's just something you can't come to resolution on, this could be conflict in terms of how we are approaching a particularly business issue, or it could be personal conflict. You may have to bring in a mediator, or more often than not, a supervisor. maybe even HR in some cases, human resources. But don't jump to that. When you feel offended at work, someone's done you wrong, don't run to your supervisor every time. Right? Don't cause more problems for them. Fix your own problems first. And if one of your number one jobs is to make your boss' job in life easier. Okay? If you do that, you'll go a long ways. Don't just take problems to them. Try to avoid that. In my personal experience, I'm usually pretty easy to get along with most of the time. But the way I offended people more than anything else is there'd be key stakeholders in a big organization, and I've moved ahead in a certain direction, taking risks to certain, and didn't bring people along with me. I didn't tell the right people. I didn't check in with the right people. And I've had to go back. I didn't always do this well, but if you go back and apologize. And another key in this whole thing is not just to say, my bad, my bad. Say, my bad, will you forgive me? Whew. How many times is that heard in the workplace? How many times is that heard in the church? How many times is that heard in the family? Please forgive me. And then go further. I'm going to fix this. This is how I'm going to do it. Is that okay? Or I'm going to do better in the future. This is how I'm going to do better. Boom, boom, boom. If you're talking to your boss. Conflict at work. Conflict at work. There's Matthew 18. I think most of you know it. Memorize it. Use it everywhere. Family, church, work. It applies everywhere. But remember, love covers a multitude of sins. And then you kick in Matthew 18 if you need to. Mistakes at work. Hopefully nobody makes this mistake. Anybody know where this is? Pardon?
Is that Gallagher or no?
No, I don't think so. That's not a name I know. Where's that? It's the Narrows. It's the Tacoma. Thank you. You made me lose the name. Tacoma Narrows. I've been there. There's a new bridge. Okay, you can get across there now. Tacoma Narrows Bridge. I don't know when this was. 30s? Maybe the 30s. Design engineer, civil engineer. Whew. Civil engineers always get us in trouble, right? Just like chemicals. They forgot to take into account, they took into account the static loads on the bridge, okay? Car comes across, everything's got to hold together. They did not take into account the dynamic loads on the bridge. When you got wind going down the Tacoma Narrows at the right velocity and creating eddies off the back of that bridge, creating a fluctuation which happens with the right wind velocity and the wind direction to hit the natural frequency of that bridge. And once the input force hits the natural frequency of that bridge, it starts growing. Look at the video, Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It's amazing. You got a car out there, and the bridge is just doing this. Solid steel, metal, and concrete doing this. All because a little bit of breeze coming down the Tacoma. This is a big mistake, okay? I just think that's a great story. YouTube it. You'll probably say, the bridge came apart pretty quickly. Nobody was killed. Nobody's hurt. Thankfully, they were able to get everybody off. But we will make mistakes at work. I don't have a lot to say here other than confess it quickly. This can be either due to your own irresponsibility. If that's true, own it. Your own laziness. You're not above that. We live in a fallen world. It's affected you personally. You can be lazy. You can be irresponsible. And that can lead to mistakes at work. But it's not that. I've told you to take risk, right? When you're engaged and active, as you should be, mistakes will happen. Things will fail. That's the only way to grow and to be successful. So confess quickly, own it, and then try to fix it. A little story here. I'd been working at Eastman just a little while, and I was assigned as assistant systems manager for engineering. We had a big mainframe that ran all of our software, design software, very early days of computing. And there was a manager of that, and I was assigned assistant manager, and there's maintenance had to be done. clean up a lot of stuff every Friday to make sure it runs good the next week. The manager took vacation for a week. He told me everything to do. He said, don't do this. If you do this, you're going to risk deleting the whole operating system and all the files. So Friday came along. I was going to clean up the system as I was supposed to. And what did I do? I did that thing. Everything shut down on a Friday. So big mistake, negligence, you might say. Yeah, new task, it's going to happen. But was it a big negative on my career? In that case, no. I mean, I made mistakes that I've not handled well, but in this case, fessed up right quickly. It was obvious. There's no way to avoid it. Everybody was dead doing work. And then worked all weekend, pulling in the right people to, reload the operating system, recover the files because we, of course, saved them at least once a day. Do all that work because I wasn't equipped to do it, but people helped me out. And on Monday morning, got called into the office, called to the carpet, and I thought, oh, here it is. Going to get chewed out. And I was commended. The way I responded to a mistake makes all the difference. So don't hide it. Own it. Fix it yourself if you can. And that will be very useful to us. Boy, I'm moving around pretty good here, so we can slow down a little bit as we talk about. Just make sure that woke at work. What do I mean by woke at work? A lot of this comes through larger companies. If you work for a small company, especially if it's got Christian leadership, you're not going to have to deal with this as much. But if you go for a larger company, or if you're a contractor and you're working for larger companies, this may come through your contracts. They require you to do this before they'll even consider you as a vendor. So how are you going to deal with this? It comes to us through diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices. Here's something you'll hear a lot. An inclusive environment, we must have an inclusive environment so that everyone can be their full self at work and contribute at their best. Well, we need to define a lot of terms before we can agree with that policy, which I'll get to in a moment. It also comes through in environmental sustainability and governance policies, ESG. That was in the provoking questions, ESG, environmental sustainability and governance. It can come through harassment policies on the edges of that, and most awfully through large public companies. There's been some stepping back from this, which is good, but I wouldn't assume that's going to be a continuing trend in industry. So we're probably going to face this in the future. How do we respond? Okay, are we skeptical, or do we automatically reject everything that comes under DEI or ESG? And that was one of the provoking questions. Just to wake you up a little bit, what are maybe some things that we can fully accept and buy into and fully support in this world that I'm talking about?
Conservation.
Elements of conservation, certainly. Sustainability policies, certainly some of those we can buy into. We're to be good stewards, not only of our own resources, but the world. We're to keep it, right? Keep this creation, and that's part of it. So there's a lot of elements of environmental conservation policies we can buy into. Yeah. What else?
Equality of opportunity.
Pardon?
Equality of opportunity.
Equality of opportunities, right. So that's can get sticky around the edges, but basically, if you're working for someone else, right, you have to really follow their policies on equality of opportunities. This is in hiring, firing, promotion, and so forth. And there's a lot of that we can agree with, all right? Anything else come to mind? So there's kind of three categories here. If you think about it, ends of the spectrum. On one end, you have the things that we can fully support. They're biblical, not unlawful in any way. They're policies we can and should support. Other extreme, there's the things that we can't support or do, that we must practice not civil disobedience, but I guess employee disobedience, if you will. And those are the things that John Stonestreet of the that I listen to a lot says we need to have a theology of getting fired in our minds. Dr. Hamilton talked about this last night. We need to be prepared to be fired, to be as we're faithful, and we'll talk more about those. There's a lot of stuff in the middle, which I'll touch on here as well. It may be things that you don't think are wise. You don't think are the best use of the company's resources. You don't think they're a long-term value to the company. But they're not unlawful in the sense they're not unbiblical, and the company's not asking you to do sin. It's not asking you to sin. So in that case, you have three choices. So that big middle section there, 3 choices, I can just line up and say, yes, sir. Moving ahead, yes, sir. 2, I can go see my management if you're a position of authority. It's even maybe more important. Make your case. Okay? Provide alternatives. Or 3, I can find another job. Sort of your options in that big middle group there, right? So think through those things. Let's hit a few specifics here. Climate change. Greenhouse gas reduction. Eastman was big into this. It fits into that middle category, right? Unlikely the company's not going to ask you to do illegal or unbiblical stuff in this regard, but you may think some of this stuff is just unwise. A lot of it is wise because in doing it, you reduce energy usage, you reduce costs for the company. Yeah, you get greenhouse gas reduction benefit. Whether you think that's a value or not is another question, but it's worthwhile. And I'd say 80-90% of what Eastman did in this environment was saving money, saving energy, and a net benefit to the company. And there was stuff that wasn't so good, but I just said, yes, sir, we'll do that too, right? So that's just one example. My own personal philosophy, whether it matters, doesn't matter much at all, is just so you know, greenhouse gas increases in our environment may very well have some level impact on the temperatures in our environment. To the degree is still in question to a great. A lot of it's just cyclical, I believe. But the question really is, what are the right choices in a response to that? There are always trade-offs. Okay? If we spend a lot of extra cost and money trying to reduce that and have very little impact on it, we have reduced human flourishing to a great degree and gotten very little benefit from it. It may be that we're better off spending money and resources in just adjusting to it. And a lot of people are moving in that direction now. We should continue to invest and innovate to adjust to whatever temperature increase there is. And it's certainly not as bad as the doomsdayers said. There's been a big rollback, even in the last 3 weeks, about what the biggest scientists and organizations in the world are saying, what's the worst case? Well, they're stepping that back to a great degree. Why? Because they kept making these predictions. In 5 years, it's going to go to pot. Oh, another 5 years, it's going to go to pot, right? Well, you can only do that so many times, and you have to start stepping that stuff back. Another aspect of this is that there could be, even without any intervention, new technologies adjusting to higher temperatures, it could be the net effect of all this is actually positive without any other activity. There's a lot of good things about higher CO2, a lot of good things about higher temperatures. What kills the most people in the world? Hot temperatures or cold temperatures? Cold, by far. Cold temperatures. And by the way, Europe has a lot more deaths from heat stroke in the summer. They should be investing in more power and that cooling cycle I talked about earlier. They could save a lot of lives with that. They have a lot of trouble with heat exhaustion, heat stroke. They lose a lot of people every year. Because I think of malinvestment, and a lot of it is driven by some crazy climate change policies. All right, enough politics for now. Let's move on. What falls into this category over here on the right that I can't do? It's unbiblical. Well, I cannot tell lies. We've already touched on pronoun use. You may face that in the workplace, although some of that's being stepped back. But you cannot tell lies. So we had one good example of how to address it with Dr. Hodges in one particular situation, but you need to plan for that. If you have to, an alternative is, I'll just address you with your name. It'll always be a name, no pronouns. That's one way to approach it, but you need to come up with your own plan before you're put in the situation, in the hot seat. You can't affirm sin either. You cannot tell lies, you cannot affirm sin. How would we affirm sin in this regard? Well, in the workplace, there'll be showers for gay weddings, showers for same-sex adoptions or IVFs for same-sex couples. There will be an expectation that in conversation about the weekend that you affirm whatever your coworker says about what they did on the weekend. This has been a problem for decades when they come in and talk about their sexual exploits. All right? Affirming that, we knew that was wrong. We should not be doing it. We should say a word of truth, or at least not participate in it, not affirm it in any way. Well, that does not change when people come in and talk about, I'm planning to get married to my same-sex partner. We can't affirm that. We can't celebrate it. We can't go to the shower that celebrates that. We might be ostracized because of this. Might be ostracized because of this. We might not get a promotion. These are all effects out there. You need to be prepared for it. But you cannot lie. You cannot affirm sin in the workplace. We cannot call evil good and good evil. So, how do you prepare for this? Well, get your mind fixed. Okay, these situations, I'm going to react this way. Get good counsel. Talk to your elders. Talk to your parents, others that you know well, how to maneuver this. But you cannot tell lies, and you cannot affirm sin. Other things we could say about this, but we will leave it there, I think. Let me just scan my notes. Oh, how can you speak up in these situations? I didn't do this perfect, long ways from perfect. You can express your opinions through company surveys. You can discuss some specific issues with your boss or HR or even people that are caught up in these sins. I remember I was on a leadership team, and my boss in that leadership team called in an homosexual man. We were just beginning this diversity stuff. Called him into our meeting and said, I'd like you to introduce this affinity group, or what do we call it? Affinity group, to my leadership that's coming, so they understand it. So he gave his spiel about why we need a gay affinity group at Eastman. And I listened politely. I didn't speak up in the meeting. Maybe I should. But as we were going down the hall, I caught up with this guy. He said, let's have a talk. He said, great. So I sat down in the office with him, and we had a good conversation for 10, 15 minutes. And I said, here's what I can do and what I can't do. You know, if you work for me or work with me, I'm not going to let this affect anything about firing, hiring, or job selection or project appointments or anything like that. That's fine. I can sign up for that. What I can't do, and what I'm hearing more and more being asked of me, is to affirm you, to include you, which means verbally affirming in multiple ways, their lifestyle. That's why we can't do that. I can't do this. And there's a lot of Christians in this organization that cannot do this. And I think it was those types of conversations throughout the company, it wasn't just me, that made Eastman stay back across the line of having altar calls in training situations where, okay, this is the policy, you're signing up for it, sign the line. That's what I mean by an altar call. Never had that, at least from what I had to experience. Maybe some supervisors did, but I never had to. So speak up. There's ways to speak up other than just, causing a big fight in the middle of a meeting. Surveys, talk to individuals, talk to bosses, talk to HR, write letters. But in all of that, you cannot tell lies. You cannot affirm sin. We'll stop there on that topic. And how are we doing? Pretty well. A lot of bad news, right, so far? Still with me? Okay. All right. So been piling on all this bad stuff, right? So what's the hope? What's our hope? I've already talked about this with regard to the curses of the fall. For every curse, there was a statement of hope. You will be able to be fruitful. You will be able to provide for yourself and your family. We're commanded to do these things. God's going to allow us to do what He commands us to do. So we've seen that. Just a few verses. Psalm 128, eat fruit of labor, blessed. It talks about eating the fruit of your labor, being blessed. A wife is a fruitful vine. All sorts of hopeful statements there. Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we will not give up. I think that can be applied to a lot of things. Your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And a lot of hopeful scriptures about as we work in our callings, both in terms of a spiritual aspect of our callings and the physical aspects of our callings. Great hope in this life. So we can be fruitful and we can have satisfaction in the Lord. And of course, if we jump way ahead, there's a great promise for future consummation and completion and new creation, new earth. Isaiah 65, for behold, I create a new heavens and new earth, and they shall not labor in vain or bear children for calamity. Speaking again to those two big curses we talked about earlier. We could also look to Isaiah 2, Joel 3, Micah 3, Isaiah 35, Isaiah 66. Great hope in the future. We can speculate a little bit about what that's going to be like. What's new creation is it? Is it like before the fall? I think it's going to be better than that. I believe Adam and Eve were headed to something better, and that's what we're headed toward, I believe in. But a lot of that we don't know the full picture of, but we know it's going to be great. And finally, we have hope now. We have hope in the future. But I believe firmly that a lot of this, rolling back the effect of the fall, is happening now. Certainly it's happening spiritually as God redeems His people, regenerating hearts, and then sanctifying us through His Spirit. He who began a good work in you is going to complete it. He's completing it and making us more and more holy. So we see it there. But I think we also see it in the physical world to an extent. Again, we're not utopianist, but God's created image bearers. In the new covenant, we see more and more the work of special grace through His church and also common grace through mankind in general of continued ordering. I know there's a lot of disorder. There's still a lot of war. Continued amount of ordering and flourishing compared to previous centuries. And that's a good thing. God promises good gifts to us, and this is one of them. We could point to a lot of things: infant mortality issues, medical care in general, The land that's available to us to live in and multiply in is greater than ever because of technology. Productivity keeps increasing, so we have ever increasing goods and services, which help in the flourishing of us, and we enjoy those things in the Lord. And the more productive we become, the more we're able to spend in other pursuits, and it's just a very positive reinforcing cycle that we've seen, I think. Genesis 5:29 is an interesting verse. I just came across it recently for not the first time, but it hit me as I was reading through the Bible again. When Lamech, Genesis 5:29, when Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Is it speaking of Noah there? Who is it speaking of? The seed of Noah, which is the seed of Abraham, the seed of David, the Messiah. The Messiah. Through the seed of the woman, promised all the way back in Genesis. In what? Certainly in establishing his church, regenerating hearts, spiritually transforming his church to be more Christ-like. But this speaks of some physical aspects too. A relief of our work, the painful toil of our hands. Back to Isaiah, vain or bear children for calamity. We sing a song every year around Christmas season, right? Joy to the World. One of the favorite Christmas hymns. Get ready, I'm going to ask you to sing. The second verse, I'm going to read it and then we're going to sing it together. No more let sin and sorrow grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. Far as the curse is found. I believe that started with his first coming. It continues. Utopia in this life? No way. Not going to happen. We'll always have thorns and thistles. We look to a true Sabbath rest. But we can sing this verse every year at Christmas. Let's sing it together. Stand with me. No more let sin, sing with me. No more let sin and sorrow grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow. Far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. Lord, may it be. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back in maybe 2 minutes from now with Pastor Hamilton.